How do we make a world where people don't take their lives because they feel like they cannot reconcile being queer and being Muslim, or being queer and being a person of faith? There's nothing to reconcile, because in the Quran, there is no condemnation of same-gender loving relationships. And I know. What about the story of Sodom and Gomorrah? The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is a story about a town that was doing horrible acts of rape, acts of incest, acts that we know in human psychology cause trauma and pain, not a condemnation of same-gender loving relationships, things that do not cause trauma and pain. What does cause trauma and pain, and even mental illness, is having to hide parts of yourself because people use religious texts against you. When Muslims and Christians began to come into contact with each other, Muslims were known for being very sexually permissive, not sexually restrictive. So seeing this narrative today that Muslims are uniquely homophobic is not at all rooted in history. The time when we started to see more of a puritanical approach to Islam was when there was contact with European Victorian morality. Moralities that started to criminalize things like same-gender loving relationships, and starting to define things like sodomy as bad and villainous and something to be condemned, and something to be codified in the law as being condemned. At that time, in the 19th century, you start seeing legislation being passed in places like Lebanon and in places all across the Islamic world that condemn these acts. But it did not come from Islam. Of the 5 Islamic countries that do not have anti-sodomy legislation on the books, those are countries that do not have the same relationship with colonization as countries like Saudi Arabia and Brunei. People like me, people who are Muslim and who have progressive values, are constantly being charged with westernizing the Muslim world. But the Muslim world is already westernized. These ideas of puritanical values, of interpreting the Quran to be oppressive, those did not come from Islam. Those came from colonizers, Western colonizers. That queer people are born within every demographic in the world. There are queer Jews, queer Mormons, queer Catholics, queer Protestants, queer Muslims, and I'm proof. And I will continue working toward a world where we can be our full selves. Like the rainbow that represents us, LGBTQ people are beautiful and naturally occurring.